Tomorrow is, of course, Halloween, which originated here in Ireland. There is no shortage of otherworldly figures or superstitions in our folklore.
That is true. And our resident folklorist, Shane Lahan, is here now to tell us about a few of his favourite folk tales relating to some frightening figures,
Yeah.
which I think you alluded to at top of the show. Shane, welcome. This is probably the best time for you because you're really going into the most dramatic time of the year.
You know, it absolutely, Maura. It was the time for Skilly. It was
Yeah.
the time for storytelling, the fire lighting, the dark evenings we're talking about. What else would you be doing? And you know, I've gone through the whole gambit here with you in the past, from witches to the puka and all sorts of things. But I came across something lovely, and I want to show you this because it's quite lovely for me. This was a book that my father put together many, many years ago. This is 80 years old now. And I think he was learning, when he was learning to be an artist, he was writing out using his lovely penmanship.
God, he's a
to
beautiful writer.
Yeah,
Look at the detail in it,
absolutely good. And beautiful drawings and different images in here as well. Sometimes they're hard to find just at the moment. But I looked at one of the stories here, and it was the great story of Jackie the Lantern. And I was thinking of it, Ty was looking at that 80 years ago. And it's one of the most wonderful stories that comes around at this particular time of the year. It's a big, long story, okay? And there are many, many parts to it. But he was a kind of a waster, if you like. He was a blacksmith who never worked very hard at doing anything. And this man gave him 3 wishes, you know? And 3 wishes, normally long ago, you'd wish to go to heaven. That was the one thing that you'd like to do. That was nearly the first wish. He didn't bother taking that wish. He wished one time for a fellow who would sit in his chair that he gets stuck in it. Another time, a fellow would who was lazy, who might grab the sledgehammer, would help him on the anvil. But his last wish, he was sick, that every time he needed money, there was no money, and he had an old purse that was forever empty, and people used to be taking money out of the purse. So his last wish was that whatever was put into the purse, he would keep it inside there, and nothing would be left out. Okay, so the devil got wind of this man in a way. Now, he's got different names, okay? He can be William, or like as Will-o'-the-Wisp as he comes
See,
on.
I remember my dad talking about Will-o'-the-Wisp.
Sometimes he's Jackie the Lantern, or Jacko
so
the
they're the
Lantern.
same.
They're the same.
I didn't know
Depending,
that.
in my own namesake, Shana, the great story of Shana, of course, and Padder, he would have the same. So this is a well-known legend. But the last wish, anyway, he had was anything would go into the bag, would stay in there. The devil, anyway, came after a long, long story, because I can't go through it all. We haven't got time.
Yes.
But anyway, what happened is that he was taking Shana, or taking, we'll call him Liam for the moment, okay?
Yeah, William, Liam, whatever, yeah.
So what happened is he was taking him off down to hell for himself. And what happened, he had one last trick. He said, do you know what? He said, I'd love a drink, he said to the devil. I'd love to have one drink going down. A pint would do me fine, and I'll go down to hell with you, no problem at all. And like that, he said, but there's no money in my purse. And didn't I hear, he says to the devil, that money is the root of all evil, and that you could turn yourself into a coin. So the devil said, of course, that's no bother for me to do that. So the devil said, I'll turn you in now. Long ago, the drinks were very cheap. They're only a penny at the time.
Yeah.
So he turned himself into a coin. And with that, what did he do? But he put himself into that, and he cut the purse, and he closed him in, and the devil was stuck.
He
inside
locked
the
him in.
purse.
He
He
locked
couldn't
him
get
in.
in. Well, what did he do next, right? Off he went, and there were some lads, and they were thrashing with flails, and he said, lads, that old purse has gone a bit stiff. Will you give it a few blows? And they were whacking away, man. Sure, Jesus. And then the flails break, okay? And they said, the devil himself must be inside in that.
Yeah.
And Liam says to him, absolutely. He says, I'd say you're right. Off he went to a tucking mill, and he threw it into the tucking mill. That was for wool long ago. Sure, make smithereens of the whole tucking mill and everything.
Yeah.
And your man says, the devil must be inside in that. Get out of here. And after the last one he did, is they went on to a forge, and there was lads, 4 strong lads, and they beating on the anvil, and then he put it down. Sure, they made smithereens altogether of the devil inside. And the devil anyway said to him, he said, that's it. He says, I want to know. No, he says, I don't care about you anymore. I don't want to have anything to do with you.
I don't want you to go to hell.
And off he said, if you let me out, I'll leave you be forever. So what did he do? So he opened it up, and out came the devil in a puff of smoke. Well, time went on anyway, and he lived a long life after that. But when he died, because he hadn't wished for heaven, he couldn't go to heaven. And when he went down to hell, and he said he was knocking on the gates of hell, the devil said, who's outside? Liam the Sapoiga, he says, you're the fella, he says, that trashed me inside that. I want nothing to do with you. And in the dark, he said, here, he passed him out a light, and he said, you can roam around. He says, you're not welcome in heaven, you're not welcome in hell. Your job now is to go around. So people long ago would see a light off in the distance.
Yeah.
And that was Liam the Sapoiga, Willow the Wisp, or Jackie the Lantern.
Jackie the Lantern,
And
that's where it
people
came
used to be
from.
drawn in. They used to be drawn across. You'd be coming home late, maybe at a night, and you might see a light, and you go across that way. Fellas fell into bog hole. No good, So this was
He'd
a great
draw them into the
distraction.
darkness.
Draw them out of darkness. He was this revenant, as we called him.
Because it's amazing, because we'd have heard of it so much, and lots of people would have seen that light. I think I saw it myself
I
coming home from the
remember
pub a few
about
times,
lights, yeah.
but never realised where he got the light from.
But the light
Yes.
from, and he
So
was,
that's where
he
he
was
got it
set to
from.
roaming all around. But there's worse, right? There's worse than that. And my other favourite figure at this time of the year was a woman called Petticoat Loose. And Petticoat Loose was often found at a crossroads, and men used to come across her quite often, and she was dangerous to be with. Now, where did she get the name?
That's instantly attractive now for a lot of men. any whiff of danger at all, no.
Yeah, you're right, actually.
Wait, you hear that? You might change your tune, okay? So, anyway, Petticoat Loose was known to go drinking. She was a great woman for drinking altogether, inside in pubs. And when she was drinking, she used to go dancing. And when she used to go dancing, she used to be twirling around and swirling around. And what happened is her petticoat, her skirt would come off, okay?
Oh, is that where it came
Coat
from?
the squealte, it was right. And off it
Automobile.
come. Sure, all the men were delighted when they saw her half naked and so on. And she had a bit of a reputation for continuing on in that sort of vein. And what happened is that she got married at one point in time. She got to a head schoolmaster. She didn't like him, so she murdered him. Okay, so she was fairly dangerous. And her favourite thing was she had two big, strong arms. We're told she had 1 ton weight in each arm. And one blow from Petticoat, and you were sent flying. Okay, so people were afraid of her, and all the men used to come in, and they'd be wrestling with her, and they'd be challenging her, and they'd be getting her to dance and so on. So one night, anyway, they were having a fierce drinking competition, and she was going helter-skelter, and they keep on egging her on, egging her on. She drank more and more, and she dropped dead, okay, with a bottle still in her hand. Well, they said, we're in trouble now. What'll we do? We better bury her somewhere. So they brought her off to a Killeen, off to a Crisheen, across roads, a little triangular, no man's land, as it were, no priest to bury her or whatever like that. So she was left without all of that. So when you were coming along then, people were coming onto the crossroads. They'd come across, they'd see this woman at the crossroads, particularly at this time of the year.
Yeah.
The ghost of her,
Okay,
is
that's
it?
the ghost
Yeah.
of her that was there. And what would happen is that someone say, an old woman, won't you come in to give her a lift? So she got onto the cart, and as soon as she did, that the poor horse started, because the weight of her two arms, a
Oh,
ton
yes,
in
the
each
ton.
arm
Oh,
at
my
one,
God,
the
yeah.
horse would start sweating like crazy, okay? And of course, he would discover who it was. So Petticoat was a huge weight. But what she would say is that because there was something kind, somebody offered her a lift, that they would have to come back the next night. So the man would go away. He was terrified not to come back, of course. He would go to the priest. The priest usually, it was the curate who usually helped out. And they would come back. So holy water put around, a scapular around their neck, and they couldn't go near her, you see. And then what happened is that the curate would come along, and he would say, well, how come you're damned? What have you done? So she'd say, I used to be watering down the milk, or I used to be drinking when mass was being said, or there was all these. She had a big long list of things. Okay, I beat up my mother and father. I killed my husband. He said, look, they're all forgivable sins and so on. And she said the final sin, I think the worst one was that she killed children. That was the worst one. And because of that, then she was damned forever. She could never get in. So it was a way of showing people what the worst sins were actually were.
Yeah.
So when she was banished then to go away, what happened is that she would go up to Baylock and up the Knockmill Downs, a lovely Corrie Lake that's there. That's one of the places where she's associated. Or she'd go to the Red Sea, and she was either to take a thimble, and there was a hole at the bottom of the thimble to make it worse. She was to drain the Red Sea with a thimble. That was her penance. Or she was to make ropes out of sand. So all of these things would show you that, time was
Hard labour.
Hard labour.
My God.
Hard labour.
We were asking actually earlier on, we were talking about Halloween and superstitions and all that. Just a few of the viewers got back to us just with different things. Well, lots of people talked about magpies, fairy forts, being afraid of them. Others said never walk under a ladder, all that. And also consider bad luck to welcome guests into your new house through the back door. Cups on the dresser should always face away from the door. I guess this time of year, though, at Halloween, all these superstitions.
Yeah,
And of
absolutely.
course, remind us just again of Halloween and how special it was, and the passing from one, I suppose, one world to another.
It's incredible because this isn't a recent thing. As Dahi said, this goes right back through time. You look at any of our mythological figures. Cuchulainn was born at Halloween. He also died at Halloween. The great god, the Dagda, the great god who looked after the tumuli, the mounds, and so on. All of those are related to time ending and starting at this point.
Okay.
This was the end of one year, the start of another year. Often time stood still. And I think that's a really important concept.
At Halloween.
This is timelessness, and timelessness is very important. In many ways, people believe that this was the beginning of time, and we reenact the beginning of the cosmogony as we
Because
call it.
tomorrow night is New Year's Eve, really, isn't it?
It is, it is.
Yeah.
It's
It's New Year's
that
Day
way.
then on Saturday.
And we also have the sense of the date, and I love the traditions. I'm very fond of a lovely Irish tradition, which is to light a candle in every room where somebody was in the past. So it's a lovely idea that the dead are come back, and if you want to remember somebody
Tomorrow night we do that.
night, you light a candle and you think about them and you say, look, that's for them. You know, we often go to churches and light candles. People lit candles in the house on Halloween Eve, and it was a way of remembering. You'd set you leave the door open, you know, you lit a fire,
For the
you went to
spirits.
bed early because the spirit would come back, and there was a welcome there for them in that way.
Yeah.
It's a lovely way of thinking about it for our viewers as well. You know, the association of all the kind of paraphernalia and commercialism of Halloween. It's great, Shane, that you're shining a spotlight on the traditions and the real deep meaning of Halloween, which is brilliant.
And people used to tell the future as well, of course. That's the other thing, you know.
Yeah.
People, we know about the barnbrack, we know about all of those
Yeah.
things.
Oh, yes,
but,
of course.
But, you know, I love as well, keep some of the traditions going. I love Colcannon. That's
We were
what I'll be
talking about
making.
on Tuesday, yeah.
Oh, it'll be absolutely great. And big lakes of cholesterol up on top, you know. You couldn't have it any better.
It didn't bother them too much
Not
years
at all,
and years ago.
and spoon away into
Yeah.
that. It'd be fantastic.
Shane, Caimid Emacht, we have to go
Caimid.
unfortunately, but I think we should have a Scialta Le Shane every
Scale
Thursday.
to the Shane is our thing, and it
Do you
works
know-
perfectly.
do you know,
for it.
we'd have all heard versions of stories growing up, and Joe Shane, you just brought me right back to my childhood
Lovely,
there again.
especially the Will of the Wisp. I
In a-
hadn't heard
in a
that from
simpler
my
time.
father from
Yeah.
40 years
Yeah.
ago.
Well, there's an endless repertoire, Dahi, an endless
And
repertoire.
still as entertaining in 2025.
Shane
Shane,
Gormila,
come on.
thanks so much. Now that's it for today, except to announce the winner.